Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 363 of the Assorted Calibers podcast. The second minute podcast is a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd. With me tonight, she is, of course, as always, the greatest hostess in the entire universe, and maybe some other universes, but I haven't asked them. Erin Paulette! How you doing, Erin?
So is it just me, or has September lasted for like 6 to 8 weeks? Because from my perspective, it just keeps going on and on and on and on and on.
I mean, supposedly this show will be posted in October. You in the future, let us know if it landed.
Yeah, I've got some stuff going on, and I'm fighting my depression, and you know all the stuff that's been going on since the Charlie Kirk murder, and I am exhausted, and I mean, look, I'm not going to trauma dump or anything on you. It's just this month has been really stressful, and I want it to be over, and I'm ready for spooky season to start, and it just seems to keep hanging in there, and you know, there have been more murders, and we have to talk about them, but I hate talking about them. And so can we have a month, please? Just 1 month where we don't kill each other? That would be great. Thank you.
Here. It seems like a simple request.
It does, doesn't it? All right. So that's how I'm doing. How are you doing? Weird. Do you have like some good news to cheer me up?
So I have some good news and some bad news. I have some bad news in the form of good news. The bad news is that there will not be an ACP next week. And the good news is because my daughter's school is doing a thing. They call it outdoor classroom. I think there's a bunch of schools in Mass that are doing it because she's got a friend on her swim team that goes to a different, this is like an entirely different school system that's going to. So, but yeah, the Massachusetts school systems have rented out a summer camp, I guess in the off season. So it must be cheaper. And I guess they're going to be having classes and activities and stuff up there. And I got a message from the school saying, we desperately need male chaperones. And I originally said it, and my daughter's like, no, I don't want my dad going. And I'm like, okay, fine. And then she said, then Haley said, you know what? Let's help him out. I'm a stay-at-home dad. This is chaperoning field trips is what I can do. So I am going to summer camp in the fall. I'm kind of excited.
Well, don't make out in front of a lake. Don't lose your virginity.
That's
all
true.
Of those things. Yeah.
What if I find my virginity? Since I am a parental chaperone. I mean, it would be a great time, but unfortunately it's with the school, so I will not be armed. But yeah, what was that noise in the bushes? Oh, it's a guy with a hockey mask. Mozambique drill. Quick, call the cops. Here we were making out by the lake, and this man with a knife came out for us, and I shot him, and he stopped.
I'm not really into horror, so like the Crystal Lake, was that Friday the 13th and Michael Myers?
Friday the 13th and Jason Voorhees.
Oh, okay.
I am into horror movies. I am not into slasher movies, and so as far as I will go down that lake is I really really like Hellraiser, but I will specifically say I watched it and I'm like, oh, that was really interesting, so I bought the book and I really really liked the book, and so now whenever I watch it I think about all the aspects of the book. Again, somebody needs to remake Hellraiser, call it the Hellbound Heart instead of Hellraiser, and have it be more of a psychological thriller than a slasher horror, because oh god, it's so good. But yeah, I like the spooky movies that are still scary after the credits roll. So, is it time just to dive into the news?
Yeah, let's just take a running start into that brick wall.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, we don't have to. I mean, honestly speaking, these ones there's not a ton to spend time on it because we're still in the bullshit
Sugar
envelope. So there's still a ton to be gone through, and speculation is legion on the internet. And screw all of you who are doing it. Just wait for the information to come out rather than just jumping on every little nitty gritty piece of detail you see. But a man crashed his truck into a LDS church in Michigan and evidently got out with a rifle, started shooting at people, and then it doesn't actually say how he started the fire, but the place, I mean, pretty much just got gutted with flames. Like, it was a pretty severe fire, which, especially for...
Okay, so it says here, authorities believe he used gas to start the fire. IEDs were also found at the scene, but it's unclear whether he used them.
Yeah, it's one of those. I don't know. That's still not getting it. It's one of those. It didn't look like it was Notre Dame Cathedral, old building. It looked like it was a relatively modern church, and so therefore likely is not built to be crazy flammable. But maybe I'm wrong on that. So to actually get it to burn like that, I would think is a little bit harder, especially as someone who used to have to start a wood stove fire all the time, and it just sometimes doesn't want to burn.
Well, I mean, you don't have to have the building burned down, and this definitely had at least a brick facade, but you are desecrating and rendering unusable and uninhabitable the interior, and he definitely succeeded in doing that. I think the thing which really bothers me the most, and there are a lot of things that bother me, but it's the fact that when he rammed the doors with his pickup truck, people quite reasonably assumed that he had done so accidentally, and they were moving towards the truck to render aid to the driver, who might have been passed out or something. And so that got them within the kill range. And I don't know how many of them were shot, but I imagine the people that were shot were the ones that were closest. Mm-hmm. And so people trying to do the right thing being punished for it, that really, really bothers me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another thing that bothered me is that he was not also, as soon as he started shooting, immediately met by returning fire from members of the church, because this is LDS. Whatever you think about them, we cannot deny that they are a heavily armed sect of Christianity, and honestly, rightfully so. Again, no matter how you feel about the church, they got started in like Vermont and upstate New York, and just ended up getting driven further and further south and west until Salt Lake City became the center point of the church. And so, yeah, this is. But I put it in the show notes just in case on the prohibited places in Michigan, and one of them is any property or facility owned or operated by a church, synagogue, mosque, temple, or other place of worship, unless the presiding official or officials allow concealed weapons. And I don't know this.
And you would think, being Mormons, they would allow it.
Yeah. So I don't know, and maybe we'll hear from somebody who knew this knew this church or knows, has some more inside information. But either way, again, gun-free zones frustrate the hell out of me so much, because they, as we see, they do absolutely nothing at keeping the bad people out. They just disarm the good people. And we need to stop with this backwards thinking.
I mean, okay, this may be controversial. It may not. But I'm one of the people who believes that it is better for these mass shooters to be killed by the police or by their intended victims rather than captured, and then there's a spectacle show trial which makes them famous, and it's all over the media for weeks or months, and it costs the taxpayers a whole lot of money. I do believe in due process, but I also believe in the lethal stoppage of crime. And if you're murdering people, you deserve to die. And so I am happy that in this case, he was fatally shot by responding officers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I will say that I am not going to say what should or shouldn't happen to a criminal. That all depends on the procedures. But I will say that obviously in the early times of spree killing really becoming a part of the American zeitgeist, pretty much the shooters would keep shooting until they got sick of it or police were around, and then they end their own life. And then I can't remember which one was Aurora, Colorado pops in ahead as one where the killer was captured alive. And I was like, oh, good. We'll get some answers. And well, in that case, there really was no trial. Essentially that case, if you didn't follow it, the killer's legal counsel essentially pled insanity, and he was insane, like absolutely positively insane, and so he is now sentenced to a mental institution for likely the rest of his life. He could technically be released, but I've heard some people be more skeptical of it than I am. I don't think he's ever going to be released. But we certainly gained absolutely no information. As a matter of fact, there was probably less information gained because so much of it was stuff to be used in the trial, and then they just didn't end up using it because it was over. So yeah, this is I overall I can't think of a single killer who was captured and that somehow brought more closure or more information that could be used to protect other people brought to light than just digging through the evidence after they die.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here, but it'll tie in pretty quickly. So less than 24 hours beforehand, there was another mass shooting. And this one was in North Carolina. And weird, I don't think we mentioned that the shooter in the Michigan attack was an ex-Marine. But he was. And this other shooting I'm talking about also involved an ex-Marine. And he opened fire on a dockside restaurant. And he killed 3 people. And I don't know if he specifically injured or just shot at them. But when they say 5 counts of attempted first-degree murder, bullets were toward them, whether or not they got wounded or not. But this definitely fits the FBI qualification for a mass shooting, right?
It depends on the definition, but we'll go with it for right now.
Okay, so
it's certainly the most recent update. Yes.
Okay. And so this shooter is a Marine who was deployed in Iraq and suffers from extreme PTSD. The Michigan shooter was a Marine who served in Iraq and has PTSD. So you remember a couple episodes ago where we were tackling the issue of the trans gun ban, and people were saying, since 2023, 50% of all mass shootings were done by trans people. And I mentioned that was cherry-picking the data. Well, hey, 50% of all mass shootings this year have been done by Marines who saw combat and have PTSD. Now, I'm not blaming vets. I'm not casting any aspersions on honorable Marines, but I'm saying this is the exact same kind of sloppy reasoning. And, okay, I don't think any of our listeners are okay with one and not okay with the other, but this is something you can use to argue. Oh, 50% of all trans shooters, it's the hormones they're taking. You know what? 50% of all mass shootings this year, within 24 hours of each other, were former Marines with PTSD. So are you going to argue that you start taking away guns from vets? No, we don't want that. We definitely don't want that. But I've found that the best way to attack sloppy reasoning is to turn it around on things people care about. And so this administration makes a lot of noise about caring about veterans. And so you can say, well, there are the same qualifications, just a different demographic here between these sets of mass shootings. And so if you're quote unquote okay with one, but you're not okay with the other, that's hypocritical. And you need to rethink your priorities. And I once again stand on the side of constitutional rights. Do not deprive any demographic of their rights without individual due process. So that's my little soapbox rant.
Yeah. No, I was actually a friend of mine who identifies as non-binary was posted one of the things that I don't think it was the Trump. I think it was a Republican somewhere was talking about, oh, all trans people should be, should be institutionalized. And they were like really upset. And I just said, yeah, but how do you define trans or non-binary? Because obviously in that previous statement, it was, oh, people that were diagnosed with gender dysphoria. Well, number one, you can have gender dysphoria and not be trans. Number two, a ton of trans people, whether they have gender dysphoria or not, aren't necessarily diagnosed with it. It's sloppy. And so it's also very similar to, and not to get too political, but Trump has also spoken that, Antifa should be considered a terrorist group. And I'm not exactly sure the full legality of all of that, but guess what? It's not really going to amount to a lot because they're not a centralized, organized group. It's not like they've just got a roster. It's not like they've got a chain of command that we could just send agents in to infiltrate and round them up. Instead, if they're out doing Antifa things, the type of Antifa things that I already don't think anybody should be doing, such as, burning, looting, destroying property, et cetera, rioting, well, then the feds can sweep in, and we'll see how it's handled. I'm not going to say that's good or bad. It could go either way, but yeah. And also, just one other thing is this is the law of very small numbers. Even though we're talking about a bunch of these incidents, they are still extremely rare, which means any sort of kind of demographic similarity. Again, we've got talking about like 2 suddenly becomes a massive number. So don't trust that. All right, now time to switch gears to the other one. And this one is actually, I'm kind of surprised. I had this article that's in the show notes kind of as a place marker, because I'm like, okay, we're going to dig a little bit more, but I think it was this LDS attack has really kind of knocked it off the news. But what day was this that it actually happened? Either way, it was last week.
Thursday, I think.
Yeah. So the I guess this was at a immigration customs enforcement facility, ICE, in Dallas, and as a van was coming in to drop off some detainees, somebody opened fire from a rooftop. and actually did not hit a single officer, and in fact, I believe hit 2 detainees, killing one of them. And there's really not a whole lot of information coming out on this, on the killer. There's some talk about the killer's politics, and it's really not set in stone, and there's still a lot going on. So I'm not going to talk about it. Don't care. Certainly there is some talk about some of the violent rhetoric against certain law enforcement communities. And again, we don't condone that. If somebody's doing something that's a problem, you deal with it, soapbox, ballot box. We don't go for the cartridge box. But the key factor is that the killer used in this case, an honest to God mil surplus Mauser. I don't know my Mausers that well. There is a photograph of the killer, because after they had finished the shooting, they took their own life. Be careful digging through these, because they are quite gory. But it definitely appears to be a Mauser of some flavor, and I think I could see in the photograph the tube of a scope. So it had a scope mounted, likely off of the rear sight block. And again, people have claimed whether or not it is legit or not. But a stripper clip of 8mm ammo was found on the scene with the words anti-ice written on them. Some people have claimed it could have been written after the fact. I'm not going to go there. But the big factor is, again, we're getting lots of fear-mongering and scary stuff about the fact that a bolt-action rifle was used. And we need to remember that the anti-gun people are anti-gun people. And so it doesn't matter if it's your bolt-action hunting rifle or others, or your sporting shotgun. Guns is guns. Still, I was hoping by today we would know how he got the gun, because and when he got the gun. There's some talk that it was it says here in the article, authority says he obtained the rifle in August, so that was before the killing of Charlie Kirk, but that's all it's not like there's a concrete statement of when he got it or where he got it. He definitely had a felony record. He had been caught with, he had worked for marijuana companies and lived in Texas, and Texas is one of the states where marijuana is not legal in any way, shape, or form. Does that specifically mean that the indicator that he was violent? No. But it would certainly make buying a firearm challenging. And illegal
you mean like when he filled out the 4473 and had to swear on penalty of perjury that he wasn't a felon and wasn't doing drugs?
Correct.
Yeah, the completely unenforceable statement that the ATF is not going to dig into in order to find out if you're lying or not.
Yeah, though it would have the very enforceable NICS check attached to that 4473 that should, but again, not always updated with criminal charges. So I don't know. I'm disappointed that I haven't found more information on this. I am definitely curious because so many of the news stories about the death of Charlie Kirk stated that he was essentially using a Nazi firearm, and that it did not appear the case. The gun appears to be a commercial hunting Mauser that he used in that instance, but this one is a legit one, and I wonder if, again, all this news hype and just stirring of the pot may have caused this to be more copycat. but again, it's all speculation at the time. If we get some more information that's not too boring, we will follow up on that.
I just want to reiterate, murder's bad.
Yes.
And I know that sounds very simplistic, but I've noticed a tendency over the last few weeks for people to go, murder is bad unless it advances our political agenda, and then it's okay. I don't want to see people on the right murdered. I don't want to see people on the left murdered. I don't want to see moderates murdered. I don't want to see law enforcement murdered. You know what? I don't want to see criminals murdered. And there is a difference between, killing them to stop them from murdering other people, like I mentioned before, and straight out, first degree premeditated murder. Just don't murder people. And I'm honestly worried about where our country is going, because we are increasingly divided, increasingly fractious. You've got media companies who will hype the sensationalism up and dance in the blood in order to get clicks, which translates to ad revenue. And so when you are stirring the pot and making people angry and afraid and potentially creating copycat killers for money, you really need to stop and think about where your humanity is. And so I know that the people listening are not the kind that are going to go out and kill people. I just need to say out loud, please don't murder anyone.
I mean, I think that that's a really great sentiment. Again, this is akin to the weird audio fisks of the, look, no anti-gun person's listening to this podcast. There's all the informatics that I have gotten my hands on say that no, you're pro-gun people. We're a broad range of political spectrums, but your support of the Second Amendment is universal amongst the listeners, and but at the same time, this is a way to help get people the word out and the talking points of the people that need to be spoken to, which is just the murder's never good. Murder is awful. No, it doesn't work out that way. So yeah, I agree with that. We all need to speak out loud against this stuff, especially in these days. We shouldn't have to, but because somehow people are saying, "Oh, well, that murder was okay." I kind of dig on that murderer. No.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this one, I don't know. I'm gonna try not. I'm gonna try not to make it boring, but and I'll make it quick, because there's really not, even though it's a couple of pages of PDF on this, but I think it was a couple weeks ago. There was a court ruling in a case where Franklin Armory, who exists solely to troll the ATF, that really is their thing. They make binary triggers, and they make a bunch of other weird guns. Some of them work, some of them don't work. Some of them are great ideas, some of them are less than interesting ideas. But their whole point is, gun control is damage and we're going to route around it. And so one of the guns that they came up with was the Providence. I think it was the Providence. They've all got biblical type names. But it had straight cut rifling. So there are grooves cut in the barrel, but they're not spirals. And that actually went through, and ATF agreed that rifling defined as cuts in the barrel that spin the bullet, it's not spinning the bullet. So therefore it's not a rifle. And it's not designed to be shot with a hand, so it can't be a handgun. And it's not a smooth bore, so it's not a shotgun. So it's just a gun. And in this case, which seemed a little bit altogether too clever, they started making AR-15 type guns. One of us with, I think, had like a 7-inch barrel and a full shoulder stock. and got it, but noted that they were making, I think it was essentially a buckshot round that was in the shape of a 223. So they could load this buckshot into the gun and fire it, and therefore would fire multiple projectiles. And it specifically states in the law that rifling is for stabilizing of a singular projectile.
Okay, you're skipping over some things. All right, so you talked about the provenance, or providence, whatever. This article from the memo, whatever, from the ATF. Now we're talking about Franklin Armory's antithesis. And so it was originally submitted to the ATF as, yes, an AR-type rifle, but it was chambered for 45 long Colt and 410 shot shells. And so because, ATF originally classified it as a short-barreled rifle because it had a 14.5-inch barrel. And then later on, a federal district court vacated that classification of short-barreled rifle, stating that it was because it was designed to fire both a single projectile, which is the 45 long Colt, and multi-projectile, which is the 410 shot shell. And so, okay, that was a win by Franklin Armory. And then what happened, they submitted a different rifle under the antithesis brand. And this one was pretty much a standard AR-15 pattern rifle. The barrel was 7.5 inches long with a 1-to-9 twist. And at the same time, they submitted a sample of ammunition. And it says here, an exotic prototype 5.56 caliber sabot ammunition that housed multiple smaller projectiles in a casing. So it was essentially a shot shell in an 5.56 cartridge. And they claimed that since the gun was able to fire this ammunition and therefore multiple calibers, or not multiple projectiles, that it wasn't a rifle and it wasn't a shotgun and therefore it was a firearm. And it pains me to say this, but I have to agree with the ATF, because the ATF said this ammunition can be chambered in other AR-15s. It doesn't make your gun special. And so, you could take this ammunition and put it in any other AR-15, and then it would be shooting shot. And so, no, you are wrong. And this would have been okay if Franklin Armory had waited to hear back from the ATF, but they didn't. So while the ATF was still mulling this over, Franklin Armory was advertising and selling these rifles. And they were stating that these were, even though they had short barrels, they were not short-barreled rifles. And so you could buy them and you could transfer them and you could do all this stuff without getting the tax stamp because they didn't apply. And they got ahead of themselves, and the ATF said no. And so Franklin Armory now, under the advisement of the ATF, is recalling them so that people aren't in trouble by violating, help me out, Weer'd, what's the name of that? NFA.
Yes.
So, I mean, I hate NFA, but it is still black letter law, and ATF has to follow it. And by the reading of the law, ATF made the right decision, and I feel dirty saying that.
Well, you are a dirty, dirty girl. But yeah, that I felt the same way when it came through. A lot of people got really excited and were talking about this, and I'm like, especially the 5.56 one, like, how does that, not be applied to everything? And clearly it didn't. And so, yeah, that's we'll see what happens. Hopefully there will be more attacks on this, or at least a chilling period where people will suddenly just go, you know what? Let's get some NFA items off the list. I've already got the tax stamp production. All right, now this last one. This is Aaron. You saw the article and you're like, didn't we report on this a couple of weeks ago? And I'm like, in fact, we did.
Yeah, it was episode 358.
But we were reporting on Bearing Arms coverage of it, and I'm trying to remember if they'd actually launched their website. I think they had, because I think I mentioned about how the trainers kind of had that. They were kind of doing the NRA carry guard thing where.
Okay, we are getting ahead of ourselves here.
Yes.
Listeners, we are talking about the Everytown branded firearms instruction. Because I know Weer'd, and I know he's going to launch into a ramble, and it's going to be 5 minutes before you find out what he's talking about.
I mean, it's like Aaron knows me. Yes, so they've got this Train Smart. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. The instructors, many of them are ex-military, and that happened with NRA's Carry Guard, and a lot of 2A people are like, yeah, but if you're a Navy SEAL, what the heck does that have to do with me, carrying a Sig Sauer in my pocket while I go get groceries? It's not a, we're not jumping out of helicopters to go raid a terrorist facility. It's
the appeal to authority fallacy.
Yeah. I mean, it really,
if you have it,
yeah, it really is.
If you have people who use guns professionally, then clearly they are experts, and that means they're experts in teaching as well.
And so, on top of all of that, they have like no identifiers on the website. Like, it just like, meet our trainers. Dan, he's from Maine, or at least he's in Maine. And I actually looked up Dan from Maine. Couldn't find any information on him whatsoever. Just, firearms instructor Dan in Maine. I looked up the shotgun sport that he supposedly is a member on. There's no, and actually I went on their national website, and there are no trainers from Maine on the website with the first name Dan or Daniel. So no idea if that's even his real name. I do find it strange that they're not doing that because, well, I've had experience with anti-gun firearms instructors, and they tend to be weirdos. So I'm not saying that any of these people are weirdos, but I'm not saying that they're not, because there's no information on it. But all that being said, that's all stuff we covered when we first got wind of this. But this article from USA Today, and a bunch of listeners sent this to me. Thank you so much. It was, it's kind of a bloodbath, because they start off talking about the fact that, this is, they're all Zoom style. I think they are actual Zoom meetings. They say Zoom style meetings, but on the website, it specifically says that, like, it specifically states Zoom by name. And you're paying money. Doesn't actually, I was actually looking to see, because obviously one thing that always bumps into me is one of those, like, if you want to learn about gun safety, but don't want to, like, go out and find a trainer and all that, why wouldn't you just go on YouTube? And there's like a million gun safety videos, training drills, that sort of stuff that you could just watch away on YouTube. And actually, it doesn't specifically say, I mean, it is Zoom style, so technically you could talk to the instructor and ask questions and things like that, which would be beneficial so long as they're giving you good information. But it doesn't actually specifically say that these are interactive classes and not just, streamed pre-recorded presentations. So I have no idea. But
what I think is odd is that there are pictures on their website of people at a shooting range as if they are receiving practical instruction. And yet these are simply Zoom sessions, and that can't be practical. That's all theoretical. And so, oh sure, we'll teach someone how to shoot over Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. So, yeah. But the big thing that everybody knew that would be right up my alley is the the paragraph heading, violence prevention members shocked at decision. And the first one up is someone who we've talked about a lot on the show, Sandy Phillips. She is the mother of Jessica Gwali. I actually have never heard her name pronounced, actually, but she was I think she was a reporter, and she and her boyfriend were attending the movie in Aurora, Colorado, and she was shot and killed. And then Sandy Phillips was involved in that lawsuit against Lucky Gunner, suing Lucky Gunner for selling the ammunition to the killer. This was being done through the Brady campaign as well, and Lucky Gunner successfully pushed to have it dismissed under the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act. And it was done so with prejudice, which meant that the plaintiffs were required to pay the defendants court costs, which was at that point in time over $250,000. And Brady campaign bailed and left the Phillips family hanging. And then the Phillips family then declared bankruptcy. And
well, more than declared bankruptcy, in at least one interview, they have laughingly stated something like, "We haven't paid and we won't pay."
That was before the bankruptcy. It was that was when they were still appealing it. Somebody said, and we covered it on the show ages ago. And yeah, someone said, are you you're on the hook for, $250,000. What are you going to do? And she openly said, we haven't paid it yet and we're not going to pay it. And, and I know a friend of the show, Costas Moros, was saying, I do feel bad for her because Brady left her hanging out to dry. And that's certainly one angle. But another interesting thing about it is that, at the time of the lawsuit, Sandy Phillips had and her husband had sold their house and moved into a motorhome, and really had kind of divested themselves of all their assets, as if bankruptcy was going to be something that may have happened. And they seemed to live just fine despite being essentially completely impoverished. And then within a year after that, was during COVID, when all the anti-gun groups were having essentially online rallies, and I was attending all of them because that's what I do. And Sandy Phillips was suddenly inside of a house. And I'm like, if you have absolutely no money and we're just living in a motorhome, how did you get your hands on a brick and mortar house? So I suspect that there was some creative accounting going on through all of this, and that bankruptcy was a tool that could have been used against Lucky Gunner had all else things failed. So I don't feel terrible.
But that's beside the point. Weird. Let's get out of the weeds.
That's true. I'm deep in the weeds. But yeah, Phillips is saying, what they're doing is so hurtful and insulting to survivors. It's like, oh my God, how can any survivor continue to support them? People are hurt and confused. Our mission is to reduce gun violence and keep people from having guns in their homes. And I hear you are giving a gun safety class that encourages gun ownership. You can't have it both ways. Now, and of course she was, part of the, it says here she criticized Brady, but she's worked for Brady for a number of years. So I never heard her criticize Brady, but it says that she's been a critic of these groups. But there's another person, Deborah Parker of Arizona, was enraged at the Train Smart launch, and she resigned her position leading a local survivor group. Her daughter was killed in 2006. I heard about the program on Facebook, and it felt like a kick in the teeth. All of these years working on expanded background checks and how we know having a gun in the home won't make you safer. This doesn't make any sense. She said she thought Everytown was wasting precious resources reinventing the wheel on training when they could simply link to a potentially neutral training programs that already exist. And I would note that potentially neutral training programs that already exist and actually work, because say if you're in one of the many states that require a training class for you to get, say, your carry permit, this Everytown stuff will not count. So yeah, I am pointing and laughing at Everytown because they are launching this very, very, very strange, messed up training system, and it seems to be hurting them on both ends, because on one hand the pro gun people are pointing out the fact that you guys are the same people that are talking about banning bolt action rifles because they're being used by killers, and yet
sniper rifles,
correct, you're also going to be saying, but here's how you can safely use these guns that you definitely should never ever own. There's the issue that a lot of people that are interested in doing training and might actually be interested in picking up, like NRA is the biggest resource for producing firearm safety trainers. And some people don't like the NRA. Both people on the left side of the spectrum and the right side of the spectrum definitely have complaints about how the NRA has been run. So maybe they would want to have something that doesn't have the NRA on it. Or there are lots of people out there that also don't like the NRA and so would be more than happy to get a certificate that doesn't have the NRA seal stamped on it. But who's going to want to join the Everytown gun safety training group when essentially the parent company's goal is to put everyone in that out of business?
Well, when we last talked about it, I floated the theory, and I didn't devise it, someone else came up with it, that one of the reasons for doing this was so that the anti-gun states could mandate training using this program. Mm-hmm. And I observed at the time we didn't know how much it was going to cost or how long it would be. And this article has answered that. And according to this article, the program costs between $20 to $100 and has sessions lasting 90 minutes, an hour and a half, 150 minutes, 2.5 hours, and up to 8 hours. And I would imagine that the 90-minute is the $20 and the 8 hours is the $100. And I would be willing to wager a substantial amount of money that if any of these anti-gun states choose to adopt this, they are going to use the most expensive and the longest version possible, because it'll be an inconvenience to lawful gun owners, and it might discourage some of them.
And given that it is essentially a single trainer in one part of the country offering classes to the entire country, it's also has a very, very low overhead, and so therefore a lot of that money is going right back into the anti-gun pockets, which is again a win-win for anti-gun states. So yeah,
and if there aren't that many trainers, then you're going to have to wait on a waiting list for who knows how long, and that'll be another delay.
Yep. The only tough part is that, again, they don't. I think they are trying to offer live fire, but we'll see how well that works out, since again, they're not getting any help from the pro gun side, and it looks like there's a lot of people that were their former allies that are actually cutting ties with them because they think this is so ill-advised.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is it's hilarious. It's hilarious. I had to post it. It was such a good story, and I hope I didn't ramble too much.
I mean, you did, but I got us back on track.
Thank you, Aaron. That's why I don't do this alone.
And now we go to David, who talks about maker's marks. No, not the Kentucky bourbon. Marks on firearms.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. Over the past several centuries, gun manufacturers all over the world have produced a wide variety of firearms. Especially with older firearms, it can be challenging to determine specifics beyond manufacturer, model, and caliber. So in this segment, I'd like to talk about markings. Firearms have been around in one form or another for hundreds of years. Initially, they were the product of skilled craftsmen making unique pieces of art and function. Over time, as interchangeable parts and mass production got involved, firearms became more plentiful and less unique in appearance. Every maker and manufacturer had their own exclusive markings. Some are easily understood, such as company and model names. Others can be somewhat tricky, such as obsolete cartridge markings or production date. And some are baffling to all but the most knowledgeable, such as proof marks. All have their place in telling the story of when, where, and by whom a gun was made. The simplest place to start is maker's marks. With most firearms, somewhere on the frame, barrel, or slide will be the name of the manufacturer and usually the model number or name as well. With relatively modern firearms, this information is generally clear and easily understood. Colt, CZ, HK, Marlin, SIG, and Smith & Wesson, to name a few, are all marked in this fashion. Even among these markings, however, there can be changes over time. With Smith & Wesson, for example, the shape of the ampersand between the two names can help identify a production era, with what's called the lazy ampersand coming first and being replaced by the current version by the mid-1970s. The presence or absence of text such as Marcas Registradas on the side of Smith & Wesson revolver frames can help identify different eras as well. If the manufacturer kept good records, and those records survive, serial numbers can help identify the manufacture date, or at least date range. Departures from a planned serial number system can also tell us things, such as Smith & Wesson's Wandering J on J-frame revolvers produced in the early 1970s. Keep in mind, until the Gun Control Act of 1968, American manufacturers were not required to put unique serial numbers on their firearms. Most did, but it's not unusual to find older budget firearms, such as single-shot .22 rifles, without serial numbers. While some companies stamp date of production on the firearm, either in clear or through the use of a code system, with others that data can only be found through a serial number lookup, assuming there is one. Thankfully, there are many resources available in both print and online to help us determine this information. So far, I've focused on the marks that are easier to find and identify. Next are proof marks. These are symbols, letters, and numbers found on imported firearms. The purpose of proof laws and proof houses are to ensure that all firearms manufactured under their jurisdiction are capable of performing in their intended role without failing catastrophically. While details vary, proofing is carried out using overpressure loads of anywhere from 20 to 50% above a standard cartridge. The amount overpressure and the number of shots fired depend on the country and laws in question. However, they all follow a similar general process. Any firearm that successfully passes these tests is marked with the appropriate symbol. The United States does not have a system of proof laws or proof houses, a fact that has led to firearms produced here being considered both heavier and more robust than some from other countries. The Sporting Arms and Ammunition Manufacturers Institute, or SAAMI, was founded in the 1920s to serve a similar purpose as the European proof houses. Being a voluntary set of standards, each manufacturer is internally responsible for making sure their firearms and ammunition meet the published standards and specifications. There are 5 sets of American national standards put out by SAAMI with regular updates. They are for rimfire, shot shell, centerfire pistol and revolver, centerfire rifle, and new firearm designs. Great Britain and most every kingdom on the continent formed their own proof houses and systems in the early days of firearm development, usually after a gun blew up in use. The different proof houses have had a number of symbols over the years, and this can be a useful tool to help date a firearm. England was one of the first countries to start proofing guns, beginning with barrels back in the early 17th century, and then extending to other pressure-bearing parts in the following years. As many older imported guns came to the United States either from or through Belgium, their proof marks may be more familiar to the collector. Nearly as old as England's, the first Belgian proof edicts were issued in 1672, and at first specifically applied to guns made in or imported into Liège. Germany formed their first proof house in 1891. They used a series of symbols which changed only a little until 1939. During World War II, additional markings were added. While these are commonly called Waffenamt, this was actually the name of the German Army Weapons Agency, founded in 1919. More correctly, these additional markings are ordnance codes. Following World War II, separate sets of proof marks were used in East and West Germany. The proof laws of most countries exempt arms made or modified for adoption into military service. In most cases, they would be required to be proofed when sold out of service onto the surplus market. Obviously, bring-back firearms captured during wartime wouldn't have these markings. The study of these various symbols is a fascinating and deep subfield in firearms development and history. I hope the general overview of them in this segment helped expand your knowledge and interest. Have fun and safe shooting.
By law, every gun sold in this country must be put to the proof before it's offered for sale.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. Finally, I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the names Brena Bock and David Bock. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
As someone who started collecting military surplus very, very early in my gun career, I believe actually the second gun I ever owned was a M1 Garand. I was surprised at like how little markings commercial guns had. Like it was one of those like, oh, it's a M1 Garand. You could have like all matching serial numbers, and started learning where all the serial numbers were on this. And then I got a commercial rifle and went, oh, it's got the one serial number right there.
Well, I mean, I think part of the reason for that is because the Mosin, being a military firearm, the military loves to serialize parts because it makes it easier to reorder them. And so I can at least understand that.
Yeah, and also make sure everything gets matched up, because you might have an armorer cleaning like a dozen of them. And you definitely want to keep each bolt with each rifle, because that was how they were assembled and hand fitted. And of course, also another thing to note is that if the gun was made before 1968 and is not a higher end gun that might want a serial number, it may not have one at all. And I've got actually several guns that have no serial numbers, and they never have, and they never will. Okay. And David mentioned how markings change, and I will say that you can go check out LFD research on their SIG 320 for why this is super important. But like Smith & Wesson has what they call dash codes. So they will release a gun, and it might be the Model 66, and then they'll go, oh, you know what? Here's some things that we can do to improve this. And this will be a 66-1 and -2 and -whatever and -whatever. And then it was discontinued for a number of years, and then they brought it back. And so the new one is a different dash code. So you can tell, all right, is this the old version or is this the new version? And it's
like patch codes for software.
Correct. And yet you could just, there's just like whole websites that just have what every single change is. So you can see, all right, well, so if you see a listing on an auction site, oh, this is a, Smith & Wesson 686-3. Well, I know exactly what that is because I know what all the -3 updates were. So it's a super duper interesting and useful. And learning to read the markings on a gun can be invaluable, especially if you're a collector or you're looking for certain features.
So Weer'd. Speaking of certain features and being a collector, we have a segment from Oddball about knives.
Welcome to Oddball's Corner Pocket. Back in episode 357, while covering the GOA convention, I mentioned that I ended up buying an Ultratech ZBPTE from the Microtech booth. I mentioned the MSRP of such a knife, and, well, Aaron balked at the idea of someone dropping that kind of money on a pocket knife. After all, I believe that's more than she paid for her current EDC pistol and, well, more than the pistol that's currently riding in my pocket. So let's talk about it. For those that don't know, the knife in question is a double-action, out-the-front automatic knife. This means that there's a switch on the side that, when you push it forward, will automatically deploy the blade, and pulling it back will automatically retract the knife through the use of springs. My particular example has a 3.5-inch Tanto blade made of M390 MK steel. Microtech is a knife company that was founded in 1994 and has been known for making higher-end knives with tight tolerances. While they do produce other styles of knives, they are mostly known for their out-the-front knives, and when a friend of the show asked me what out-the-front knife to get a decade ago, my answer was Microtech. At the time, you basically had the choice between them, even more expensive custom makers, or the super cheap Chinese knives like the $35 Lightning OTF knife, which may or may not work after the third or fourth deployment. He followed my advice and has been happy with this purchase. I will say that things have changed in the past few years with companies like CobraTech coming out with OTF knives that, while still not cheap, are significantly cheaper than Microtech knives, while still being dependable knives. So, why go with a Microtech? The first reason, which you might have picked up on, is reliability. The day that the automatic knife ban was lifted in Tennessee, I bought one of those El Cheapo no-name Chinese out-the-front knives. It was not good. It was firmly in the Mall Ninja quality with a capital K category. I regularly had to put it back on track just from deploying it, and I think that I actually had to disassemble it a few times to get it working again. As I said before, a double-action out-the-front knife is spring-loaded in both directions. To do this requires a decent amount of engineering and tighter tolerances than are strictly necessary to make other kinds of knives. Tighter tolerances require more skill and more quality assurance, which costs more money. A few years later, I picked up a CobraTech for around $100, and it's a fine knife. Its deployment is reliable, and it's made out of materials that I feel are much more appropriate for a knife that will see actual use. For the rest of the segment, I'll be comparing the Microtech to it, since I don't think I'd be comfortable going any cheaper for this style of knife. At NRAM this year, I picked up a Microtech Hera 2 Mini, which is roughly twice what I spent on that CobraTech. The difference between the two is fairly easy to tell if you have both of them in hand. The Hera is much smoother in deployment, and the switch to deploy or retract the blade is significantly lighter to actuate than on the CobraTech. The Microtech Hera also has less blade play than the CobraTech. Of course, that is one of the issues with out-the-front knives. Due to the nature of the mechanism, the knife is resting against a spring after all. This means that there will be blade play both front and back and in and out. The question is how much, which, as you can imagine, depends on how tight your tolerances are, and tighter tolerances cost more money, yada yada yada. The next is materials used. Microtech, for the most part, uses M390 MK, which is a very slight variation of M390, to the point that many suspect that it's actually the same thing. CobraTech goes with D2 carbon steel most of the time, which is a wonderful budget steel. But M390 is pretty much universally considered a far superior steel in every way, and a more expensive steel to both purchase and work with. After that, there is something to be said for where the knives are made. Microtech, with a few exceptions that they clearly mark, make all of their stuff in the US from U.S. parts. Cobra Tech and similar companies assemble their knives in the U.S., but they source all of their parts from China. As I've said in the past, Chinese knives aren't necessarily junk. There are some excellent Chinese knife makers, but I do know many people who prefer to own US-made, or at the very least, specifically not Chinese-made stuff if they can help it. Microtech has also gone for some nice design details that make their knives a nicer experience. Take the pocket clip, for example. The pocket clip on the Cobra Tech is a simple stamped piece of spring steel. Pretty standard stuff, absolutely functional, and an inexpensive way to go about things. Microtech decided to go about it a bit differently. Their pocket clip is milled, which means that they can put in some details that would be impossible if they were just stamping them out. Also, the part of the clip that actually touches the fabric of your pants is actually a ceramic ball that is embedded in the clip. This means that while the clip is secure, it is almost impossible for it to snag against the fabric when slipping it in your pocket or pulling it out. This has to be a significantly more expensive part, and is a touch that strays into luxury. Finally, there is the brand name. I'd be lying if I didn't say seeing the Microtech brand on the side of the knife didn't bump the value up. Just like people are going to be willing to spend more on a BMW 3 Series because it has that BMW badge on it, than they would, say, a Kia Stinger, even if the car reviewers have consistently stated that the Stinger was the better car across the board. So, I've said why you should go with a Microtech Hera 2 Mini over a similar-sized Cobra Tech. But that's still a $260 knife, and not a $400 knife, like the Ultratech ZBP that I'm currently staring at. Why on earth would I make the decision that that was worth the purchase? The obvious thing is that it is bigger. The Hera 2's blade is just under 3 inches, and the Ultratech's is 3.5 inches. Of course, that's not a huge size difference, but it is there. There's also the fact that the Ultratech line is their flagship knife. This is the one that they consider their best knife, and should have the best build quality of the bunch. Which, of course, I think many would argue is a branding tax, and I'm not sure how much I could argue against that. The last thing, and this is the big thing, is the amount of blade play. Remember how I said that out-the-front knives have blade play due to the nature of the design? Yeah, well, this one doesn't. I don't mean, it has some but nothing to be upset about, but rather, if it has any, I can't detect it. I've yet to actually tear this one apart, but from what I understand, this involves a cone inside the handle that the tang of the blade wedges into as it's deployed. I believe that this is a patented mechanism, and it's a game changer in the world of out-the-front knives. Of course, at the end of the day, do you need to drop this kind of money on a knife? Absolutely not. Of course, we all know people that drive BMWs and Mercedes when a Honda Civic or Toyota Corolla would work perfectly well. I also know a gentleman who has been carrying a Staccato as his EDC pistol for years, and just replaced it with an STI because the STI came optic ready, while I'm often found carrying this little Ruger LCP Max. Well, I hope you found that interesting, and that you've learned something. If you would like to read more of my thoughts, I can be found at gunscarstech.com, and I'm a regular on the Handgun Radio podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future segments, I can be reached at Oddball at gunscarstech.com, or on the Assorted Calibers Facebook page. Until next time, have a good one.
Aaron, did you look at the price for the for the knife that Oddball bought?
I did not, because I still have a problem with his previous knife, which cost $100 more than my current carry gun, which came with a red dot. Fiber optic, but still. I am too stingy to be a knife collector.
Yeah. I mean, there is a ton of really, really good knives that you can get for a very, very good budget, but all the whiz bang that goes into, especially in out the front, it's not cheap. But yeah, I have a Microtech Hera 2 Mini, and I absolutely love it. It is really, really nice, and as I mentioned, I started collecting military surplus early on. Like, I probably could get like half of my Mosin-Nagant collection into what I paid for this little small pocket knife, but it's really nice. And yeah, he mentioned like the carbide ball on the clip. It's excessively luxurious, but it is so nice that it just kind of rolls onto my pocket.
So, which one did he get again? Was it the regular Hera 2, or is it the Mini, or what?
He has the I know he has the Hera 2 Hera 2 Mini, but I think he mentioned that he got the Ultratech.
Okay, it's not substantially more than the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wait, if you keep going, they get more expensive. Okay, these are now more expensive than the Glock 26 I bought about a decade ago.
Oh my goodness, I just got to one. Oh, it comes also with a flashlight, but still, that's a lot of money. The $1,800 one.
What? Seg fault. Aaron's brain has had a segment fault.
Yeah, I don't really get exactly where the money goes into that one.
$1,788.
Yep.
I mean, if you can afford it, good for you. Enjoy. Rock on with your bad self. I'm gaping like a fish here. It's just, I don't understand.
Yeah, there's so far that I could go. To quote Melissa McCarthy from the absolutely marvelous buddy cop movie The Heat, does it come with a motorcycle? Is it magic whiskey? And an outrageously overpriced club drink. But yeah, they are they're very nice, and Oddball talking about the cheap Chinese out the front that he had that it sounds like it didn't last or needed to be repaired to keep it working. That leads into the line of nothing is more expensive than cheap knives. You would think, oh, I'll buy this $10 knife at the gas station, and you know what? It's fine. It's a brand new knife. I'll keep it. It may not last as long as a more expensive knife. And but it'll be but I'll have it, and they'll wear out, they'll break. Some of them can be straight up dangerous, where they will break in dangerous ways and might cut you, you can still get like decent knives for like $50 or under, and that will last practically forever, so if not abused. And so yeah, There's nothing more expensive than cheap knives. Then I guess what's more expensive than cheap knives is really, really expensive knives. You could buy a $1,000 knife that's really just an object of art over a functional knife that would be 1/10 the price. And there's also the brand name thing. My Honda is the Elite trim because we wanted to get we wanted to make it nice, but we just did not want to step up into the Acura because a very, very similarly appointed vehicle with the Acura badge is so much more expensive. So yeah, the brand name also has a price. And I'll just close out with a little bit of just technical things. Is number one, I tried to edit it out, but he was talking over it, so it totally got stuck in there. You might have heard Oddball get a text message. If you see if you can name the video game that text message came from, the text message sound came from. And he also swapped our friend who carries a very expensive, very nice double stack 1911 and has since replaced it or upgraded it with a even more expensive, very nice double stack 1911 made by the same factory, but the older version was the STI. And now it's called Staccato. And the reason is because STI used to be Strayer Tripp Industries, and Virgil Tripp and Sandy Strayer both left the company like in the late 90s. So it seemed kind of strange to still call it STI.
So, Weer'd, do you know who else enjoys fine quality knives?
I would assume our listeners. I mean, I think everybody enjoys a fine quality knife. There are people that enjoy a fine quality knife like Aaron Paulette enjoys fine quality knives. And then there are people who enjoy fine quality knives like me. And then there are people who enjoy fine quality knives like Oddball. There's different levels of enjoying a fine knives, but who I will say right now, I enjoy our listeners. And so I would like to thank them, each and every one of them. Thank you so much for listening to this show. We really appreciate you. But we got to give an extra special thanks to all our supporters on Patreon. So you go to Patreon, go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers podcast and sign up. And patrons get an early release of the podcast, plus bonus content like the hilarious blooper reels, the ACB film tracks, and the ACB mag dump.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts because we like good reviews. Subscribe to us on the platform of your choice and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
I get a blog. It's weerdworld.com. That's weerdworld.com. And hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can get more from me at linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.com/Aaron Paulette. All one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
So, Weer'd Beard owns the Microtech Hera 2 Mini. And I have money. Our buying choices are assorted. And so is our podcast. Good night, everyone.
Good night.